In the last episode, we have seen how the British changed their attitude after starting the trade center in Surat, and how they brought private soldiers to Hindustan and weapons, terrorizing the public and forcing the local rulers to surrender by all means, by pointing guns and swords against the public of Hindustan. In today's episode, let us review how the British destroyed or started sucking the blood of Hindustan to the last drop. If I tell you that before the arrival of the British, that is, until 1600, Hindustan was the most industrialized and the richest country in the world, will you believe me? It's not so easy to believe because we were not taught about those facts and truths in our schools. And that's the reason. But let us see what the American Unitarian minister, Mr. J.T. Sunderland, stated about the status of Hindustan before the arrival of the British. This American Unitarian minister, J.T. Sunderland, states that nearly every kind of manufacture or product known to the civilized world, nearly every kind of creation of man's brain and hand, existing anywhere and priced either for its utility or beauty, had long been produced in India. And note this phrase or his affirmation: India was a far greater industrial and manufacturing nation than any in Europe or any other in Asia. And this was the situation or the status of Hindustan, the most industrialized and the richest nation in the world. And this was destroyed totally by the British. First of all, by destroying the industries of Hindustan, a systematic, a well-programmed and well-planned process of destruction that was exercised or practiced by the British in Hindustan. And Britain's industrial revolution was built on the destruction of India's thriving manufacturing industries. The British systematic destruction of the textile industry was the first great deindustrialization of the modern world. And please note this highlighted part of this affirmation or this statement. The soldiers of British East India Company systematically smashed the looms of the Bengali weavers and broke or cut off the thumbs of the weavers so that they could not play their craft. They could not weave anymore. The 25% share of the global trade in textile which Hindustan enjoyed in the early 18th century was reduced to zero. And the company's administrator, William Bendick, wrote that the bones of the cotton weavers were bleaching the plains of India. I remember that I have learned about this William Bendick, or I was taught about this William Bendick in my upper middle school classes or lower high school classes. But I was never taught about such a statement which he made while the Bengali weavers were dying because the British had destroyed their livelihood. And see this affirmation by the British economic historian whose name is Agnes Madison. And he states, in AD 1700, Hindustan's share of the world economy or the global GDP was about 27%. Towards the end of the 17th century, it was about 23%, and that is as large as the whole Europe put together. By the time the British departed from India, it had dropped just over 3%. This is a copy of the statement of this famous person called Thomas Babington Macaulay, or commonly known as Lord Macaulay. In this statement, he affirms I have traveled across the length and breadth of India, and I have not seen one person who is a beggar, who is a thief. Such wealth I have seen in this country, such high moral values, people of such caliber, that I do not think we would ever conquer this country unless we break the very backbone of this nation, which is her spiritual and cultural heritage. And therefore, I propose that we replace her old and ancient education system, her culture. For if the Indians think that all that is foreign and English is good and greater than their own, they will lose their self-esteem, their native culture, and they will become what we want them, a truly dominated nation. And this affirmation was made on the 2nd of February 1835. In fact, what the British did in India is exactly according to this statement. Many people question the authenticity of this statement. But if we compare this statement to what really the British did in Hindustan, they correspond each other 100%. And this is a fact. And in fact, what they did was breaking the backbone. And the deindustrialization of Hindustan was the first step which they made to break the backbone of Hindustan. And the British extracted from Hindustan approximately 18 million British pounds of that period each year between 1765 and 1815 as taxation only by the East India Company. And this person, Robert Clive, in 1757, while he was at the top of the British East India Company, triggered the Battle of Plassey with the Mughal Emperor, as we have seen in the last episode, overthrew the local ruler of the emperor, put the bribed subordinate of the name Mir Jafar on the throne in exchange for a facto control of Bengal. Soon, Robert Clive could empty the Mughal treasury of Bengal and transfer the sum equivalent to about 2.5 million British pounds of that period to the company treasury in England as spoils of the conquest. And this is an affirmation of Mr. Shashi Tharoor in his book, An Era of Darkness. Again, on his first return to England, Robert Clive took home about 234,000 British pounds of that period from his Indian exploits, making him one of the richest men in Europe. Clive came back to India in 1765 and returned 2 years later to England with a fortune of 400,000 British pounds. Again, Indian diamonds were forcefully taken away by the British. In 1702, Thomas Pitt, the governor of Madras, took a diamond said to be the finest jewel of the world to England. Soon after his arrival in England, with this diamond, he gave up his governorship in Madras, and he purchased a grand estate and paid handsomely for a seat in the parliament. This also is an affirmation in the book An Era of Darkness by Shashi Tharoor. In the following episodes also, we will continue to review how the British sucked the blood of Hindustan until the last drop. And these pages were intentionally hidden by the central government of Hindustan until the last few years. The reason why I have prepared these videos and shared them with you. So thank you very much for your kind attention to my words. See you in the next episode. Jai Hind.